My stepmother lifted a champagne flute and stole the microphone. She smiled at coworkers and called me her tax write-off. My father stared at his plate, hiding. Jenna filmed framing my face for tomorrow's gossip. Patricia said I never belonged, and the room went quiet. She expected tears, then a sprint for the exit. Instead, my laptop bag sat heavy against my ankle. Inside was a folder labeled Guardianship 1000, 999 plus one unopened voicemail. If you want receipts, not rumors, subscribe before I continue. Where are you watching from city and time because dessert was about to become an audit? Patricia kept the mic like a gavel, soaking up the spotlight she'd rented with my name. The Harbor Club glittered behind her, but my stomach felt like concrete. I'd invited 2 coworkers because she insisted, and now they sat trapped, smiling politely, unsure where to look. Patricia talked about sacrifice, about taking me in, about how I should be grateful for a family I never earned. Every sentence was a chain. I let her finish because interruptions are gifts to liars. Then I stood calm and said, since we're doing truth, let's start with 1,999, and eyes turned toward me. A month earlier, my life was spreadsheets, school pickup for my nephew on Fridays, and microwave dinners I ate standing up. HR emailed my promotion at 9:06 a.m., and I stared at the subject line like it might vanish. I called Dad. He said good job and asked about my car's oil. Patricia grabbed the phone and sounded thrilled. She planned a celebration dinner and sent a calendar invite with gold banners and a guest list full of her friends. She even added 2 people from my office. Sweetness from Patricia always meant paperwork. I accepted because I still hoped. 2 days after her invite, USPS informed delivery showed a Bay State federal envelope addressed to me. The scan arrived, but the mail never did. The next day, another time-sensitive envelope appeared in the app and vanished again. When I drove to my parents' house, the old mailbox had been replaced with a locked metal box. Patricia stood in the doorway blocking the hall, smiling too fast. Identity theft is everywhere, she said, as if that explained why my letters were stacked face down on her entry table. That night I changed passwords, turned on alerts, and saved every screenshot. She invited me for Sunday coffee and slid a tidy folder beside my mug. Just adult updates, she said, like we were friends. Page 4 said power of attorney. My pulse thudded, but I kept my voice even. Why would you need this? Patricia laughed softly. You're busy now. It's for emergencies. Emergency was her favorite costume for control. I closed the folder and said my attorney would review it. Her smile tightened, then returned practiced. Don't embarrass me, she whispered. In the car, I wrote one line, I'm done auditioning for safety, and I started building a paper trail. That week, my bank app welcomed me to a home equity line I never opened. On a muted Zoom call, I watched the notification glow and felt my skin go cold. The fraud specialist emailed a PDF authorization with my name typed under a shaky scribble. I checked file properties like Marlene taught me later created while I was in a meeting edited minutes after. The author field pointed to a co-working account Jenna loved. I didn't accuse her. I froze my credit and requested the audit trail. Lucas texted, bring backups. Don't walk into her theater empty-handed again, ever. Back at the club, Patricia leaned into the mic and gave her punchline. We took her in for the benefits. A few people laughed, then stopped when they saw my face didn't change. I had practiced calm as a skill. Under the table, my laptop strap looped around my ankle, grounding me. I opened the folder labeled Guardianship 1000, 999, and slid one page onto my lap, a court order naming Patricia, guardian of the estate when I was 7, not guardian of me, of money. Chest tightened, but my voice stayed flat. Do you know what she collected in my name? Patricia blinked just once, and I knew I'd hit the real bruise. What are you talking about? She asked too loud. I didn't answer her first. I answered the room. When I was 7, there was a settlement tied to my birth mother's accident. Life insurance, too. Patricia became guardian of the estate so she could manage it. I lifted my phone. 2 hours before dinner, an insurance adjuster left me a voicemail asking why the disbursements stopped in 2008. Jenna's camera dipped. Someone whispered disbursements. Patricia's hand tightened on the mic like she might snap it right in half. This is a promotion dinner, Patricia stammered, switching to her helpless voice. Not the time. I smiled without warmth. You don't get to pick the time after you picked the stage. I tapped my screen and put Bay State's fraud line on speaker. Case ID 6F3-219, Raymond said, calm as a metronome. We confirm a HELOC application and paper authorization submitted under Miss Anderson's identity. The room went rigid. My father finally looked up, face gray. Patricia reached for my wrist, then stopped when she saw the cameras plural and realized witnesses worked both ways, and her smile started to dissolve. I didn't play the voicemail yet. I held it like a match, letting the room imagine fire. Before dessert, I said I want one question answered. I pointed to the court order on my lap. Why were you appointed guardian of my money, Patricia, and why did payments stop when I turned 16? A cough from the far end. A chair scraped. Jenna's phone lowered, her confidence evaporating. Patricia tried to laugh, but it cracked. Because you'd waste it, she hissed. My father's jaw clenched. He finally understood she managed me. And that's when the club doors opened behind her. Lila Carver stepped in, wearing a blazer and a badge that didn't care about Patricia's social calendar. She spoke to the manager, then faced our table. Miss Anderson, she asked. I nodded. Patricia's face drained. Lila scanned the mic, Jenna's phone, my sleeve of documents. Bay State requested immediate preservation, she said, loud enough for everyone. Notary Journal hallway footage and all recordings stay intact. Jenna froze mid-swipe. Patricia's hand trembled on the microphone. My father's chair scraped as he stood. I didn't move. I pressed play on the voicemail and the adjuster's voice began. We're calling about the disbursement history. The adjuster kept talking, unaware of the room. Our records show payments for 9 years, he said, then a stop order placed by the guardian. Patricia made a choking sound. Jenna's phone sagged, no longer a weapon. I looked at the guests and felt something new, not shame, but gravity. That guardian was Patricia, I said. My father's hands shook at his sides. Lila asked Miss Anderson, do you want to file a statement tonight? I answered, yes. Patricia backed away from the mic, eyes darting toward the door. I understood why she planned dinner. She needed me silent before the trail spoke. A month before the Harbor Club dinner, my life was finally boring in a way I'd earned. I was up at 5:40 packing my nephew's lunch because my sister worked an early shift, then driving straight to the office with coffee burning my tongue. At 9:06, HR emailed promotion approved. I reread it twice, then once more like the letters might rearrange themselves into a prank. My manager pinged me on Slack, proud of you. I screenshot it, smiled, and went right back to my spreadsheet. For seconds, I felt weightless. Then I remembered who would hear the news first. I called Dad during my break, expecting a quick congratulations and a lecture about saving for retirement. He cleared his throat, said, "Good job," and asked if my car needed an oil change. Then Patricia slid onto the line with that bright, practiced cheer she used for charity auctions. "We are celebrating you properly," she said. No more little dinners. She named the Harbor Club like it was a crown. Before I could answer, an email arrived with a calendar, invite gold, banner dress code, and a guest list longer than mine. I stared at it, but I clicked accept. Patricia followed up with texts every day as if enthusiasm could erase history. She asked my coworkers' names, insisted on a nice photo moment, and reminded me not to be awkward. I went to Nordstrom after work and tried on a navy dress that made me look like someone who belonged in glass rooms. In the mirror, I heard her old comments, too sensitive, too much, not enough. I bought the dress anyway and carried it home like armor. Hope kept whispering, maybe this time she meant it. Experience answered, maybe this time she needs it. I wasn't sure, honestly. 2 mornings later, my phone pinged with USPS informed delivery. The scan showed a thick Bay State federal envelope with my name and apartment number. When I got home, my mailbox was empty except for a pizza flyer. I waited a day, then another scan appeared, stamped time sensitive. Again, nothing. I checked with my building manager, checked the wrong slots, even checked the trash near the mailroom like a paranoid raccoon. I told myself it was missorted. Then the date on the scans matched the day Patricia sent the invite, and my stomach tightened. I screenshot both scans made folder. I drove to my parents' house with a casserole dish as my excuse, rehearsing casual in the car. The old mailbox was gone. In its place sat a metal box with a padlock bolted to the brick. Patricia opened the door before I knocked. "Oh, hi, sweetheart," she said, voice too bright. I asked about my missing mail. She waved a hand. "We've been dealing with identity theft junk," she said. Behind her, on the entry table, I saw a neat stack of envelopes turned face down. My name was on the top one in ink. She blocked my hand. I reached for the envelope, and Patricia stepped sideways, smiling like a hostess denying a bad wine pairing. "Don't worry," she said. "I'll sort it." I asked again, slower, to hand me my mail. Her smile held, but her eyes sharpened. My father's TV droned from the den. He didn't appear. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the stack. Patricia's fingers shot toward my screen, then froze an inch away, remembering cameras exist everywhere now. "You're stressed?" she whispered. "Let me help." That word help sounded like a lock turning. I drove home, heart hammering steady. The next day, I called USPS and read the tracking numbers from the scans. The agent's tone changed like she'd sat up straighter. "There's a change of address order," she said. "It forwards to a P.O. box." I asked when it started. She gave the date, and my stomach dropped the exact afternoon Patricia sent the Harbor Club invite. I asked who filed it. The agent couldn't say, but she confirmed it wasn't me. When I hung up, my hands were cold. Suddenly, the dinner didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like cover. I opened my laptop and started a timeline. Bay State confirmed an online application had been started under my name. The fraud specialist sounded careful, asking security questions twice. "We also received a paper authorization," he said. Hand-delivered. An email arrived with a PDF attachment, my name typed under a shaky signature that was close enough to insult me. I forwarded it to Lucas, my coworker, who never pretended office politics were more important than reality. He called immediately. "Freeze your credit," he said. "Request the audit trail. And do not sign a single thing from her. If she wants a stage, she wants witnesses. Back everything up." The audit trail included a notary stamp number tiny in the corner, but loud to anyone who'd closed on a house. I searched it and found Harbor Notary Services above a nail salon. On my lunch break, I walked in and asked about stamp 44178, keeping my voice friendly. The receptionist glanced at the number and said before she could stop herself, "Oh, that's Miss Anderson's usual." Her eyes widened when she realized what she'd revealed. "We can't discuss clients," she said too fast. I nodded and asked whether they kept a journal. Her gaze flicked involuntary to a camera. That afternoon, I met Marlene Ortiz at my office because I didn't trust my apartment to be private. She skimmed my screenshots, then asked a question that landed like a stone. "Did Patricia ever handle money for you as a minor?" I frowned, memory reaching. I remembered tax folders she kept locked and the way she signed school forms without letting me read them. Marlene explained guardianship in English. A court can appoint someone to manage a child's assets, and that guardian must report every dollar. If she diverted your mail, Marlene said she may be hiding an older trail. By Friday night, I had a routine work by day, evidence by night. I printed my credit report, circled the new inquiries, and built a timeline on legal paper with times in red. Lucas insisted I back everything up twice, then once more to the cloud. I looped my laptop strap around my ankle and practiced standing up like it was a fire drill. Patricia kept texting heart emojis and sweetheart words she'd never used before. The Harbor Club dinner was a week away. I told myself I could still cancel. Then my phone rang from an unknown number again. I almost let it go to voicemail, but I answered. A voice said he was Theodore Whitman, an attorney who handled guardianship records connected to my name. My skin went cold. He told me he could not speak with anyone else in my family because the file was sealed. I asked why he was calling now. He paused. "Because someone requested a disbursement history this week," he said. I stared at Patricia's invite on the fridge and understood the timing. "Meet me tomorrow at 9, he added. "Bring ID. Come alone." Then he said, "Your guardian wasn't appointed for love." Saturday morning, I met Theodore Whitman in a quiet office above a bookstore downtown. The hallway smelled like paper and lemon cleaner. He shook my hand, checked my driver's license twice, and closed the door. "This isn't about your promotion," he said. "It's about a guardianship file opened when you were 7. My throat tightened. He slid a thin folder across the desk, stamped with my name and a court seal. "Someone requested the disbursement history this week," he added. "That request triggered my duty to notify you. He warned me not to discuss it with family until I understood. He explained that my birth mother died in a crash and a settlement was placed in my name. The court appointed Patricia as guardian of the estate, meaning she managed money, not bedtime stories. Each year she was supposed to file an accounting." Theodore tapped the file with one finger. "There are gaps," he said. "Years with no reports, then a termination request when you turned 16. My stomach flipped. He handed me certified copies, the original appointment, a bond form, and a final letter marked incomplete. "If she diverted your mail, she may be diverting records too," he said. I left his office with the folder hugging my ribs like it could keep me upright. In my car, I stared at the word guardian until it lost meaning. Then I called Marlene Ortiz. She listened without interrupting, then said, "We treat this like 2 parallel cases, current fraud and historical mismanagement." She told me to request the full docket, every filing, and any bank account tied to the guardianship bond. "Do it fast," she warned. "If Patricia senses this, she'll scramble." I drove straight to the registry of probate, took a number, and waited beside strangers for 1 hour. When my number was called, the clerk slid a glass window open and asked what I needed. I gave my name and the case number Theodore wrote on a sticky note. She typed, frowned, then softened. "This file is sealed, but you're the protected person," she said. She printed a docket summary and stamped it. The address listed for notices was not my childhood home. It was a post office box across town opened years ago. Under authorized recipient, Patricia's name appeared again with her signature dated the same week as my 7th birthday. My hands went cold on sight. That post office box was the same one USPS had forwarded my mail to last week. I walked into the cold air and felt the pieces click together. This wasn't a new trick, it was a habit. I drove to the post office and asked for a supervisor. I showed the informed delivery screenshots and the docket. Her eyebrows lifted. "A forwarding order and a guardian recipient request use similar forms," she said. "If someone knows the system, they can reroute everything." She helped me file a fraud complaint, printed my receipt, and murmured, "Next, you want the notary trail." I went back to Harbor Notary Services the next day with Marlene's preservation letter in my bag. The receptionist recognized me and stiffened. I asked for the journal entry tied to stamp 44178 and for any video covering that afternoon. She repeated policy, but her eyes kept flicking to the hallway camera. A supervisor appeared and said, "We've already been contacted by the bank." Then he added, "Your stepmother was here with papers and she was in a hurry." I thanked him and walked out before anger showed, because anger would warn them. Silence was safer. Raymond from Bay State called that night and said the paper packet included a photocopied ID that wasn't mine. The clerk had stapled it, initialed it, and wrote "delivered by P." "Anderson?" Raymond's tone turned hard. "This is identity creation," he said, "not just a signature." He offered a compliance officer to attend the dinner and preserve evidence in real time. I agreed, even though my stomach flipped at the idea of strangers watching my family fall apart. "We'll treat it like an audit," Raymond promised. When I hung up, Patricia texted Hart and asked if I wanted fish or steak. Late Friday, after my nephew was asleep, I sat on my kitchen floor and let memories surface. Patricia had always kept the tax folders in a locked cabinet. She called it being responsible. When I asked about college savings, she'd smile and say, "Don't worry your pretty head." When I asked why my mail sometimes went to her house, she said I was too disorganized. I believed her for years because believing her was easier than fighting. Now the guardianship docket proved she had practiced rerouting my life since I was 7. I opened binder and labeled sections by date. On Saturday, I filed a police report for mail diversion, not because I thought an officer would solve my family, but because reports create timelines. The desk sergeant listened, wrote my reference numbers, and told me to keep copies of every scan. I asked my building manager to install a locking mailbox insert and to note that no one else had permission to collect my mail. I also told my boss in one sentence that I was dealing with identity theft and might need to step out for calls. She didn't pry. She just said, "Handle it," and I did. Sunday evening, Patricia called to confirm details voice syrupy. "Bring your laptop," she said. "Show everyone your promotion announcement." My skin prickled. She had never cared about my work until now. I said I'd keep it simple. She laughed, then asked if I'd signed the emergency forms yet. I said no, and the pause lasted one beat too long. "Fine," she replied, clipped. "Just come on time." Minutes later, Jenna posted a story, a microphone, and the caption, "Tonight, celebrate." I zipped my laptop bag and looped the strap around my ankle. Inside were guardianship copies, case ID, and voicemail. At the Harbor Club, I arrived early on purpose because I wanted to see the room before Patricia could choreograph me. Crystal lights, white linens, harbor water, dark beyond the windows. My chair had a ribbon like a gift tag. The microphone stood near the glass, angled toward the head of the table, not toward me. Patricia hugged me for show and whispered, "Smile." Jenna circled, phone raised. I greeted my coworkers, felt their polite confusion, and kept my posture calm. Under the table, my phone buzzed with text, "Don't play the voicemail yet. Wait for her toast." I listened. Patricia waited until plates were cleared because she loved a clean backdrop. She stood, tapped the microphone, and thanked everyone for celebrating my promotion. Applause came polite and uncertain. Then her tone shifted. "Myra's story is unusual," she said, pausing to let eyes turn. My father stared at his napkin. Jenna steadied her camera. Under the table, I touched the folder marked Guardianship 1999 and hovered over the voicemail icon. The unknown number texted one word, "Now." Patricia raised her glass and my phone flashed a bank alert. Payment scheduled to Anderson Family Trust. Patricia smiled and my stomach dropped. Patricia raised her glass and my phone flashed a Bay State alert, payment scheduled to Anderson Family Trust. I kept my smile in place, but my stomach turned. That wasn't my trust, and it wasn't a bank typo. It was a move. Patricia's eyes skimmed my face, hunting for the moment I'd crack. Jenna's camera hovered, ready to capture tears. My father stared at his napkin like it was a lifeline. I slid my phone under the table and opened the fraud portal, watching the case ID glow like a warning light. Across the room, Patricia's friends clapped on cue today. She spoke about my promotion as if she'd engineered it, then pivoted into her favorite sermon about family. Some of you don't know, she said, voice syrupy, that Myra came to us through a special program. Laughter, fluttered, confused. We took her in, Patricia continued, and we've managed the responsibilities ever since. Managed. That word hit harder than adopted. My fingers tightened around the folder under my thigh. I waited until she said, and for legal reasons, we'll be updating documents tonight. Then I stood. The chair squealed. 40 faces turned. I opened my bag and set my phone recording. Patricia, you're right, I said, keeping my tone calm. There are legal documents, but they're not the ones you think. I held up the certified docket summary Theodore gave me. In 1999, a probate court appointed Patricia Anderson guardian of my estate. Gasps rippled. My coworker Dana blinked confused. Guardian of my money, I clarified, not my feelings. Patricia's smile twitched. That's private, she snapped. I nodded. So was my mail until you forwarded it. I turned the page and read the P. Oh. Box address allowed. The same box USPS used to steal my bank letters, the ones she hid. I didn't play the voicemail yet. I let the silence stretch because silence makes people fill it. Patricia tried. We handled things because you were a child, she said, voice trembling. You wouldn't understand. I answered. I understand enough to ask where it went. I lifted my phone so the screen faced the table payment scheduled Anderson Family Trust. My father's head jerked up. Jenna's camera dipped. That's not my account, I said. That's yours. Patricia's cheeks flushed. She leaned toward me and whispered, Don't do this here. I smiled. You invited the here. A few guests shifted suddenly, regretting reservations. That's when a woman in a blazer approached our table and held up a badge. Compliance, she said, and the word landed heavy. Patricia's eyes widened. This is private, she snapped. The woman shook her head. Not anymore. Bay State requested preservation of all evidence tied to Miss Anderson's identity. She looked straight at Jenna's phone. Do not delete anything. Jenna froze mid-swipe. My father stood, then sat, then stood again, like his body couldn't decide what to be. Patricia tried to laugh, but it sounded thin. The manager hovered pale, whispering that officers were waiting downstairs. Silence filled the room. The compliance officer introduced herself as Lila Carver and asked me, not Patricia, what I wanted. That alone felt like oxygen. I want my mail, my accounts, and my name back, I said. Lila nodded and held out a gloved hand. I slid the plastic sleeve across the table, the forwarded mail form, the guardianship docket, the forged authorization. Patricia's jaw clenched. Those are family papers, she protested. Lila's tone stayed flat. They're evidence. My father's voice cracked. Pat, stop. Patricia spun on him, furious. You're choosing her. He swallowed. I'm choosing reality. Jenna filmed, and for once she froze too. Patricia pivoted into her oldest tactic. She's overwhelmed, she told the guests, smiling too hard. She gets confused about money. That's why we've always handled it. My chest tightened not because it was convincing, but because it was familiar. I looked at Lila. She filed a change of address to intercept bank mail, I said. And this guardianship file shows she's been intercepting notices for years. A woman whispered. Years. Patricia's smile faltered. My father finally asked Pat, what did you do? She stared at him like betrayal. Then her eyes found the exit and the heel of her shoe tapped twice sharp. The manager leaned in and whispered that officers were waiting downstairs. Patricia lifted her chin. Call them, she said, as if boldness could erase ink. Lila nodded once. 2 uniformed officers entered minutes later, calm and firm. They asked my name and ID, then turned to Patricia. Ma'am, we're responding to a report of diverted mail and a forged authorization, the taller one said. Patricia tried her warmest smile. It didn't land. Jenna's phone trembled. My father stared like he'd never watched consequences walk in. I read my case number aloud, steady digit by digit. Everyone went silent behind me. The officer asked if I authorized anyone to open credit or handle my mail. No, I said, and I have a guardianship file showing diversion for years. Patricia cut in. She's spiraling. The officer lifted a hand. Ma'am, let her answer. That simple boundary made my throat burn. I showed the forwarded mail form with Patricia's handwriting and he photographed it. Lila told Jenna to preserve raw footage. Jenna's eyes filled and she nodded. My father whispered, I didn't know. I said, you didn't want to? Patricia's smile collapsed. She glanced at the door, calculating. I heard her heels tap once. I showed my phone screen payment, scheduled Anderson Family Trust. That's the destination, I said. That trust was created last week. Patricia snapped, it's for stability. The officer asked who the trustee was. Patricia hesitated. My father said I never signed anything. The officer asked him again, and my father repeated it louder. Lila leaned in. We can place a hold, but we need the receiving account, she said. The number sat on my screen. I turned it toward her. Patricia's eyes widened because she knew I also had the insurer's voicemail about stop disbursements. Her grip on the mic loosened. I pressed play. The adjuster's voice carried, we're calling about the settlement disbursement history for Myra Anderson. Patricia's face drained. She reached for my phone, then stopped when the officer stepped closer. Ma'am, he warned. The voicemail listed dates and said a stop order was placed by the guardian. Someone whispered, that's theft. My father covered his mouth. Jenna stared at Patricia, stunned. Lila asked if I had the guardianship account number. I slid Theodore's highlighted page across the table. This is it, I said, and it isn't any account I've ever used. Patricia backed away from the microphone, shaking. The officer asked me to step into the hallway and give a statement. Lila said she'd place an immediate hold and subpoena the notary journal. Patricia reached for my father's arm. My father pulled away. Not tonight, he said, voice cracking. I gathered my folder and stood. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Denise at the title company. They tried to record a deed transfer 5 minutes ago. My heart dropped. I showed Marlene. Her jaw set. Then we leave, she said, because they're not just stealing your money. They're coming for your home. And it was moving. Denise's text sat on my screen like a flare they tried to record a deed transfer 5 minutes ago. Marlene didn't ask permission. She grabbed her coat, my folder, and my laptop bag. I stood, looked at the table once, and said, I'm leaving now. No apology, no explanation. The compliance officer nodded, the officers followed, and Patricia's smile finally cracked into something feral. Jenna kept filming until Lila told her again to preserve everything. My father reached for my hand, missed, and whispered my name like it was a prayer. Outside, the valet handed me my keys, and I drove with my jaw locked and the heater blasting. Lucas followed in his car, headlights behind me the whole way. We met Denise at the title office across from the courthouse, then sprinted to the recording counter like people late for their lives. The clerk behind glass glanced at Marlene's bar number and stopped chewing her gum. Marlene slid the case packet through the slot and said, Emergency dispute, possible fraud, hold recording. The clerk typed frowned and turned her monitor so we could see the timestamp and the destination, Anderson Family Trust. My stomach flipped. The clerk whispered that a lawyer had filed it as Rush, and the lawyer's name was one I recognized from Patricia's charity board. Marlene asked for a recording reference, a printout, and a supervisor. The clerk's eyes flicked to a camera and she nodded. While the supervisor was summoned, Lila stood beside me and called Raymond on speaker. We have a trust transfer attempt in progress, she said. Can you freeze any outgoing settlement disbursement tied to Myra's guardianship file? Raymond's voice turned crisp. Yes, but I need the account history and the guardian's authority paperwork. I handed Lila Theodore's certified copies corners already soft from my grip. Marlene emailed scans to 3 addresses, then told me to text myself the clerk's reference number in case my phone died. My hands smelled like sanitizer and paper. Lucas offered me a granola bar from his coat pocket, and I realized I hadn't eaten since noon. I took one bite and kept watching the monitor there. The supervisor arrived, scanned the packet, and sighed like she'd seen this movie. We can't unring a recording, she said, but we can flag it and accept a corrective affidavit today. Marlene asked for English. It slows the transfer and alerts lenders there's a dispute, the supervisor said. Marlene filed the dispute on the spot, then demanded every page submitted with the trust transfer. The clerk printed a stack and stapled it hard. On top was an email chain with full headers. I didn't read it yet. I only saw the subject line and felt my throat tighten. She won't notice. Marlene followed my gaze and murmured, that's intent. The supervisor added, whoever filed this knew what they were doing. In the parking garage, Marlene spread the papers across the hood of my car under harsh fluorescent light. The email chain showed Patricia coordinating the rush filing with a lawyer calling it cleanup before Monday. Lila texted Raymond the trust account number and he confirmed a hold was placed within minutes. My hands shook when I heard the word hold because it meant I'd stopped something real. Lucas leaned on the pillar and said, you just blocked the second punch. I exhaled, then checked my calendar and saw a reminder pick up my nephew at 6:15. Life didn't pause for betrayal. Marlene said we'd file an emergency motion at dawn with the guardianship docket attached, and I finally felt awake. I picked my nephew up from aftercare with my mind still in the courthouse. He chattered about spelling tests while I signed the clipboard and smiled like everything was normal. In the car, he asked if I was mad because kids always notice. I told him I was tired and I meant it. At home, I heated frozen lasagna, set out his homework, and listened to him read aloud while Marlene emailed drafts. My father called. I let it ring, then answered. "Are you okay?" he asked. I stared at the guardianship papers on my counter. "I'm functioning," I said. He whispered, "Patricia is scared." I replied, "She's scared because control is slipping." Tomorrow, I needed him to choose truth. After my nephew fell asleep, Jenna texted, "Can we talk?" We met in the lobby under the security camera she used to joke about. Her eyes were puffy and her phone shook. "Mom said it was just paperwork," she murmured. I didn't know about any settlement. I asked, "Did you help file anything?" She opened a folder labeled Forms and showed me a screenshot. "Temporary conservatorship petition hearing Monday." My breath caught. "She said it would stop you from making mistakes," Jenna whispered. I saved the screenshot to my cloud folder and said, "This is her next move." Jenna swallowed. "I also have the raw video from tonight," she said. "If you need it." I nodded, and she sent it. At midnight, my kitchen table looked like a war desk guardianship docket dispute receipt and Jenna's raw video uploading. Marlene emailed a draft response to the conservatorship petition, and I printed it beside my nephew's spelling list. And disaster side by side. I set reminders for 8:00 to call the clerk, 9:00 to meet Marlene, and noon to pick up my nephew. I wrote a boundary list on a sticky note and taped it to the fridge. No private talks, no signatures, no guilt. When the upload finished, I locked the file with a new password and backed it up again. Then my doorbell camera pinged. A stranger stood at my door with a manila envelope and asked for me. I didn't open the door. I spoke through the intercom. "Identify yourself." He said he was a process server. I told him to leave the envelope with building security. In the lobby, the receptionist handed me the manila envelope and asked if I was okay. I nodded. Upstairs, I set it beside my nephew's homework and stared at it for a full minute. The label read, "Probate Court Emergency Petition." I sliced it open with a butter knife and pulled out the first page. The header made my vision narrow, "Temporary Conservatorship Request." Under petitioner, it listed Patricia Anderson. Under hearing, it said Monday 9:00 a.m. Attached were exhibits, the trust transfer, the POA, and a doctor form I'd never signed. I called Marlene and read the hearing time out loud. She didn't panic. "Good," she said. "Now we know the battlefield." She told me to email the petition immediately and to avoid Patricia completely. I forwarded the pages, then opened Jenna's raw video and bookmarked the moment Patricia admitted diverting my mail. I wrote one list on a legal pad, facts, dates, witnesses, backups. Then my phone buzzed with a new unknown text. "She already filed to access your medical records. Tomorrow she'll claim you're unstable." I stared at the screen, hearing my own breathing, and understood the next fight wouldn't be at a dinner table. It would be in court with my sanity on paper before the week started. Sunday night, I didn't sleep. I kept hearing the phrase temporary conservatorship like a siren. At 5:30, I made coffee, packed my nephew's lunch, and opened Marlene's draft on my laptop. The kitchen smelled like burnt toast because I forgot it in the toaster while rereading the petition. Patricia had attached a doctor form and claimed I was mentally unfit to manage money. I wasn't scared of court. I was scared of being labeled. I printed 3 copies, clipped them, and drove to Marlene's office at dawn. On the passenger seat, my phone kept buzzing, but I refused to look. Marlene met me in jeans and a blazer, hair pinned tight. She slid a legal pad toward me and said, "We answer with facts, not feelings." We listed our exhibits, the mail forwarding complaint, the notary journal request, the bank fraud case, and Denise's dispute receipt. Then she asked for something I hated. "Bring proof you are competent," she said. I wanted to scream that I shouldn't have to. Instead, I pulled my work badge, my promotion letter, and a budget spreadsheet. Marlene nodded. Also, she added, "We get your doctor today. If she wanted labels, we would bring signatures." By 9, I was in my primary care clinic sitting under a poster about blood pressure. I explained to Dr. Shaw that someone was trying to take legal control of my finances. She looked at my file, then at me and said, "Are you in danger?" I told her the truth, not physically, but on paper, yes. She wrote a letter stating I was oriented, employed, and capable of decision-making. When she signed, I watched her pen like it was a lifeline. Outside, I listened to the insurance voicemail and saved it to a folder named Settlement. Steady now. Jenna met me behind my office building at lunchtime, eyes hidden by oversized sunglasses. She handed me a flash drive and said she couldn't breathe after seeing the petition. Mom already picked a psychiatrist, she whispered. She wanted a report that says you're impulsive. My stomach clenched, but I kept my voice low. Did you email anything? Jenna nodded and forwarded me a chain from Patricia titled Narrative. In it, Patricia wrote that the settlement was family money and that I would blow it. Jenna's thumbs trembled. I thought it was normal, she said. It isn't, I answered. Not ever. At Marlene's office, we built a binder. Lila printed the bank's timeline and highlighted where the forged ID was stapled. Raymond emailed a note confirming the hold on any outgoing trust payment. Marlene added Dr. Shaw's letter and my employment verification, then clipped Jenna's email chain behind it. She made me practice answering questions, name, address, job responsibilities, daily routine. Say it like you're describing your calendar, she said. I did. Monday staff meeting, nephew pickup, grocery run, bedtime. No spirals, no chaos. Just a life. When I finished, Marlene smiled. Good, she said. Now we go quiet for now. That evening, Dad asked to meet at a highway diner with cracked vinyl booths. He arrived alone, palms sweating around a coffee cup. I didn't know about any settlement, he said, but he couldn't hold my gaze. I slid the guardianship docket across the table. He read Patricia's signature and whispered, She told me you didn't want the mail. Marlene texted hearing confirmed Monday at 9. Dad swallowed. When you were 12, he admitted Patricia opened an account in your name. I signed one form. She said it was for college. He exhaled broken. I never saw a statement afterward. After dinner, I practiced testimony in my apartment, standing by the sink so I wouldn't pace. I read questions from Marlene's list and answered into my phone recorder. Describe your routine, I said, and replied, I work full-time, I manage budgets, I pay my bills, I care for my nephew. Then I practiced the line, No, I do not consent to Patricia speaking for me. Each time I said it, my chest loosened. Lucas called to check in and reminded me to charge my laptop. I plugged it in beside the toaster, then labeled the cord with tape cord. Small, but it felt like control. At 1152, my doorbell camera pinged. Patricia stood in the lobby hood up staring at the lens like it owed her something. She didn't ring. She waited, testing whether I would open the door to negotiate. I saved the clip and sent it to Marlene and the responding officer. My nephew slept down the hall, and that made my voice steady. I pressed the intercom. You are not allowed here, I said. Patricia waved once, a mock goodbye, and walked out. 10 minutes later, an unknown number texted. She filed a medical release tonight. Check your portal. Right now, Myra. Monday arrived cold and gray. I packed my nephew's lunch, dropped him at aftercare, and drove straight to court. Marlene met me on the steps with one coffee and a rolling briefcase. Lila waited beside her, calm and prepared. Dad arrived alone, clutching a notarized statement. He didn't touch me, but he stayed close, trying. Jenna sat in her car across the street, sending one text, I'm sorry. Inside, the metal detector beeped at my keys, and the guard waved me through. My throat was tight, but my posture held. Marlene whispered, short answers. No speeches. Facts win today always. Outside courtroom 4B, Patricia sat in pearls, dabbing at eyes that looked dry. Her lawyer whispered while she nodded. When she saw me, she smiled like leverage. I'm doing this for you, she mouthed. I kept my face blank. Lila stood beside me, and Dad's notarized statement trembled in his hands. The clerk called our case. Patricia's lawyer lifted a folder labeled Forensic Evaluation. A woman in a white coat stood and sat behind Patricia. Jenna texted, Who is that? My stomach dropped. Marlene leaned close and whispered, She's not court-appointed yet. We object. Stay calm. Breathe. Right now. We entered the courtroom and sat at counsel table. The air smelled like dust and burnt coffee. I placed my hands flat so no one could claim I was trembling. Patricia's attorney whispered to the woman in the white coat and passed her a sealed envelope. Sealed meant surprise. The judge entered, we rose, and my heartbeat steadied on the way back down. He skimmed the petition, then looked at me. Miss Anderson, do you understand why you are here? Yes, Your Honor, I said. He nodded once. Then we'll start with the evaluator. Marlene squeezed wrist under the table. The evaluator stood and introduced herself as Dr. Morton hired to assess my capacity. She spoke smoothly about impulsivity and financial vulnerability, using words like weapons with velvet handles. Then she lifted the sealed envelope and said she had reviewed medical records obtained through a signed release. My throat tightened because I had never signed one. Marlene rose to object, but the judge held up a hand. "We'll hear it," he said, eyes narrowed. Dr. Morton opened the envelope and pulled out a single page with my signature at the bottom. The signature looked like mine. The date was yesterday. In that second, I felt the courtroom tilt. My signature sat at the bottom of the page like a trap dated yesterday, ink dark and confident. Dr. Morton held it up as if paper could diagnose a person. Patricia's pearls gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and she didn't look at me. She looked at the judge, waiting for the gavel to make her story true. Marlene rose again, voice steady. "Objection, Your Honor. Foundation and authenticity." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Miss Ortiz, I'll allow voir dire." My mouth was dry, but my hands stayed flat on the table the way I'd practiced by my sink. I could hear my own pulse in my ears and the soft click of Jenna's text arriving. "Is that real?" I didn't answer. I stared at the date and realized Patricia had forged time itself and planned to call it love in court. Marlene walked to the podium with my promotion letter in one hand and the forged release in the other, like two versions of my life. "Doctor," she said, "who hired you?" Dr. Morton glanced at Patricia's attorney. "I was retained by the petitioner." Marlene nodded. "So you are not court-appointed?" "No." "And the medical release you relied on was provided by the petitioner?" "Yes." Marlene turned to the judge. "We contest the authenticity. We also contest the scope." Then she looked back at Dr. Morton. "Did you witness Miss Anderson sign this?" "No." "Did you verify her identity?" I reviewed the file. "Answer the question." Dr. Morton's cheeks reddened. "No." Marlene held up a page from my primary care portal, the one Dr. Shaw signed that morning. "Doctor, would you like to compare signatures?" The courtroom went very quiet. "Because if you didn't, you're repeating a story, not science today." The judge leaned forward. "Miss Ortiz, do you have evidence of forgery beyond suspicion?" Marlene said. "Yes, Your Honor," and called Lila Carver. Lila stepped up with a slim binder and a USB drive, all business, no theatrics. She explained, "Bay State's process, a release opens doors, but every door logs footprints. The file, Doctor." Morton reviewed was accessed using a credential tied to Patricia Anderson's email, she said. Patricia's attorney objected. The judge waved him silent. Lila continued, "The release was uploaded from the same IP address used to submit the HELOC packet. My phone buzzed in my pocket, low battery at 12%, but I didn't look. I kept my eyes on the judge as Lila held up a screen capture of the upload timestamp Sunday night, 10:41 p.m. while I was home making my nephew's lunch and guarding my door. That timestamp wasn't opinion. It was a digital fingerprint alone. Marlene asked permission to play a short clip. The judge nodded. The courtroom speakers crackled, then Patricia's own voice filled the air from Jenna's raw recording, sharp and casual. "If she won't sign, I'll sign. I've signed for her before." A hush spread across the benches. In the clip, Jenna sounded uncertain. "Is that legal?" Patricia laughed. "It's family. The court won't care if she looks unstable." My stomach twisted, but the words landed where they belonged on her. Patricia's lawyer sprang up, shouting objection, but the judge held up a hand and let the audio run to the next line, the one that made my father's shoulders collapse. "Monday we file. Once I'm conservator, she can't touch a dollar." The judge stared at Patricia as if seeing her for the first time. Patricia's pearls shook with her breathing. I felt my lungs unlock because truth sounded so plain out loud. The judge turned to Dr. Morton. "Doctor, did you independently obtain records, or were they handed to you?" Dr. Morton swallowed. "They were provided." The judge looked at the signature page again, then at me. "Miss Anderson, you deny signing this release?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said, and my voice didn't shake. He nodded once. "I'm excluding the evaluator's report at this stage." Patricia made a small choking sound. Her attorney started to argue, but the judge cut him off. "You filed an emergency petition with disputed documents. That is not how this court operates." He instructed the clerk to mark the clip and the bank logs as exhibits. My water bottle sat unopened beside my elbow condensation, sliding down like slow time. The judge then asked Patricia a question that sounded simple and deadly. "Where did you get this signature?" Patricia opened her mouth and found nothing but air. The ruling came quickly after that. The judge denied the temporary conservatorship petition and issued a no-contact order on the spot, instructing Patricia to stay away from me, my home, my employer, and any financial institutions connected to my name. He also ordered an immediate audit of the guardianship file, including bond records and disbursement accounts, and referred the forged release and trust transfer attempt to the district attorney's office. Patricia's lawyer whispered urgently, but Patricia's eyes were fixed on me, bright with rage and fear. "You're doing this to your family," she hissed, forgetting the judge could hear. The judge's voice hardened. "Ma'am, you did this to yourself." My father stood and offered his notarized statement, hands shaking. "I never authorized any trust," he said. The judge accepted it, then looked at me and asked, "Miss Anderson, do you want restitution pursued because choice will shape what happens next?" I swallowed and said, "Yes, Your Honor," saying it felt like crossing a bridge I'd avoided my whole life. The judge nodded and set a status conference, then dismissed us with a warning to Patricia's counsel about sanctions for bad faith filings. Outside the courtroom, the hallway sounded too loud, shoes, whispers, the squeak of the water fountain. Jenna stood by a column, mascara streaked, clutching her phone like it might burn her. My father hovered, trying to apologize with his eyes, but I kept moving because I still had real-life logistics. My phone flashed 2% battery. Lucas handed me his charger without a word. Marlene leaned close and said, "We won this round." Then Lila's phone rang and her expression changed. "Myra," she said softly, "the insurance company just sent the disbursement ledger. There's a second account you've never seen. And the withdrawal was made 3 days ago, not years." My stomach dropped. 3 days ago meant after the dinner invite, after the forwarding order, after she realized I might wake up. Marlene took the ledger and flipped pages fast, lips moving as she calculated. Lila pointed to a line item marked Guardian Disbursement Cashier's Check and a recipient name that wasn't Patricia's. It was Harold Keller, the attorney who filed the rushed deed transfer. My father went pale. "That's Pat's board lawyer," he whispered. Marlene's eyes hardened. "Then this isn't just theft," she said. "It's a network." I looked down at my calendar alert, pick up my nephew at 3:15, and felt anger sharpen into focus. I didn't get to collapse. I had to keep moving. Lila leaned in and said, "Theodore Whitman is waiting with the originals." My phone buzzed with a new bank notification, and the word on the screen was "released." I stared. Someone had beaten the hold somehow. That bank notification released felt like a slap in the middle of the courthouse hallway. Lila's eyes snapped to my screen, then to her own phone. Marlene didn't gasp. She went quiet the way she does when her brain shifts into pure procedure. "Show me," she said. I turned my phone toward her. The alert wasn't dramatic. It was worse than dramatic. It was clean, official, and timed to make me feel powerless again. My father's face drained. "How can anything be released if there's a hold?" he asked, voice cracking. Lila's jaw tightened. "Holds don't stop everything," she said. "They stop what we know to stop. If someone moved it through a different channel, cashier's check, third-party instruction, older authority, they can slip it through a gap." She looked at me. "And your case has gaps?" Marlene flipped the disbursement ledger to the last page, the one that mattered. A line item sat there like a confession. Guardian Disbursement Cashier's Check recipient Harold Keller. The lawyer who filed the rush deed transfer. The lawyer who sat on Patricia's board. The lawyer who knew how to make paper move fast and questions move slow. "This isn't a mistake," Marlene said, voice low. "This is coordination." My stomach turned not from fear, but from recognition. Patricia didn't improvise. She curated. She didn't just want my money. She wanted my narrative. She wanted me labeled unstable so nobody would believe me when I said something was missing. That conservatorship petition wasn't protection. It was a muzzle. Jenna stepped closer, hugging her phone to her chest. "I swear I didn't know about Keller," she whispered. Her voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Mom just said, 'our attorney.' She said you'd thank her later." I didn't snap at Jenna. I didn't comfort her either. "You can help now," I said. "Do you have anything from Keller? Emails, invoices, calendar invites, anything with timestamps?" Jenna nodded too quickly. "I can check," she said. "I have Mom's shared calendar from when she made me manage content." Lila's eyes flicked up. "Shared calendar," she repeated like she'd just been handed a crowbar. My phone buzzed again, another notification, and my chest tightened. Not a bank alert this time. A text from Theodore Whitman. "I have the originals. Meet me now. Same office. Bring counsel." Beneath it, one more line. "Do not let Patricia reach the file first." Marlene read it over my shoulder. "We go," she said. "Right now. If you're watching this and you've ever felt your life being rewritten while you stood there breathing, tell me in the comments. Would you chase the paper or would you go home and lock the door first? Because I didn't get the luxury of choosing the safer option. I had to choose the true one. We moved like a team without needing to say it. Lila called Raymond, told him the hold had been bypassed, and asked for an escalation to legal. Marlene texted her paralegal to prepare an emergency subpoena for Keller's client file. Lucas stayed close, quiet, carrying my charger and my backup drive like they were oxygen. My father trailed behind, stunned, repeating, "I didn't know," as if those words could rewind 20 years. Jenna followed too, not filming now, just walking, shoulders hunched like she finally understood what a camera couldn't fix. On the drive to Theodore's office, my mind kept looping one question. How many times had Patricia moved money while I was busy surviving? How many times had she smiled at my report cards, then filed another form that made me smaller on paper? Thought about her favorite word, help, and realized she used it the way thieves use gloves. Theodore's office door clicked shut behind us, and the air smelled like old books and polished wood. He looked older than he had on Saturday, or maybe I was seeing him differently now, less like a lawyer, more like a gatekeeper of my childhood. He nodded at Marlene, glanced at Lila's badge, then slid a thick red folder across the desk. "These are the originals," he said. "Certified, time-stamped, unaltered. And they explain why your hold was bypassed." My throat tightened. "How?" I asked. Theodore tapped a page near the front. "Because in 2008, your guardian filed a petition to modify how disbursements could be issued," he said. "Not direct deposit, not mailed checks. Cashier's checks issued upon guardian instruction to named third parties." He paused, watching my face. "That modification was approved. Your file shows the court believed it was in your best interest." Marlene's pen moved fast. "Who drafted the modification?" she asked. Theodore didn't hesitate. "Harold Keller," he said. "He appears on the filing as counsel for the guardian." Lila exhaled through her nose, the way people do when anger is too expensive in court. "So Keller isn't just a board attorney," she said. "He's been in this since at least 2008. "Yes," Theodore confirmed. "And there's more." He pulled out a thin envelope attached to the inside cover. Aged paper legal staple, marks the kind of thing you don't misplace by accident. "This is the guardianship bond history," he said. "There are discrepancies, missing annual accountings, and a termination request that was never properly closed." He looked at me directly. "Meaning parts of your guardianship may still be considered active on paper, even if you thought it ended." My skin went cold. "Active," I repeated. "How is that possible?" Theodore spread 2 pages side by side. "Because the termination order was filed," he said, "but the final accounting was incomplete. The court accepted it anyway. Your guardian claimed you were unreachable at 16. He lifted his eyes. "Unreachable. While you lived in the same house." My father made a sound like he'd been punched. "She told the court you were unreachable," he whispered. Theodore nodded once. "And because notices were sent to the guardian-controlled P.O. box, the file never came to your attention. You didn't miss your paperwork. Your paperwork missed you on purpose." Marlene's voice stayed controlled, but I heard the steel. "We can reopen this," she said. "We can petition for a full accounting and restitution." Theodore nodded. "Yes. But you'll need more than moral outrage. You'll need proof of where the money went." He slid one more page forward, a ledger with handwritten initials and a routing notation. "This is the problem," he said. "Some disbursements moved into accounts that were later closed, but one account is still open." Lila leaned in. "Whose account?" she asked. Theodore hesitated for the first time, like he hated the answer. Then he turned the page toward us. The account holder's name wasn't Patricia. It was Richard Anderson, my father. My father stared at it, mouth open, eyes wet, shaking his head like paper could be wrong if he refused it hard enough. "No," he said. "No, I never. Marlene didn't accuse him." She asked one clean question. "Richard, did Patricia ever ask you to sign anything labeled bond, guardian, or escrow?" My father's hands trembled. "I signed forms," he admitted. "Years ago. She said it was to close things out. She said it was for college. I didn't read the fine print." Lila's phone buzzed and her expression changed again. "Raymond just confirmed," she said quietly. "The cashier's check recipient Keller deposited into a trust operating account, then transferred into a personal account ending in 4,412. Theodore looked down at the page. "That account," he said, "is still open. And it's scheduled for another disbursement next week." My mouth went dry. Another. Next week meant Patricia wasn't done. It meant tonight's humiliation, Monday's petition, and the bypassed hold were all just steps in a bigger schedule. Marlene closed the folder and met my eyes. "We can stop the next one," she said, "but only if we move faster than she does." My phone buzzed again, this time a notification from my building's door camera. Someone was at my door, and the face on the screen was Harold Keller holding a manila envelope, smiling like he belonged there. Harold Keller stood outside my apartment door, manila envelope in hand, smiling like he owned the hallway. I didn't open it. I called building security, then the non-emergency line, and I forwarded the live camera clip to Marlene and Lila. Keller rang once, then twice patient, as if persistence could turn trespass into permission. Over the intercom, I said, "Leave the envelope with security. You are not allowed to contact me." His smile hardened. "I'm here to resolve a misunderstanding," he replied. I recorded everything, breathing slow. When the cruiser arrived, I stayed by window and watched him step back. 2 officers met Keller in the lobby. He presented the envelope and a business card, all charm and polished edges. I could hear him through the door. My client wants closure. One officer asked his name again and reminded him there was an active no-contact order involving Patricia. Keller shrugged like rules were for other people. Marlene arrived on speakerphone, crisp. "Officer, please note counsel is attempting contact in violation of the order." The officer wrote it down. Keller left the envelope with security and walked out, still smiling already, plotting his next angle. I asked for footage too immediately. Upstairs, I opened the envelope with Marlene on video call and Lucas sitting silently at my table. Inside was a settlement reconciliation proposal offering to resolve all historical questions if I signed a release and agreed to mediation conveniently after Patricia's petition collapsed. Attached was a draft affidavit claiming I had received full benefit of my guardianship funds. Marlene laughed once humorless. "They're trying to launder a lie through your signature," she said. She told me to touch nothing else, scan it, and bag it as evidence for the DA. Then she added we stopped the next disbursement with an order. At dawn, Marlene filed an emergency motion to reopen the guardianship and freeze any future cashier's checks. Theodore Whitman signed a sworn declaration describing the 2008 modification and Keller's role. Lila escalated the bank hold to Bay State's general counsel, and Raymond emailed a confirmation that any transfer to the trust account would trigger manual review. I also filed a formal complaint with the State Notary Division about Carol's stamp being used without witnessing my signature. Every step felt small, but together they formed a fence. Patricia had lived on gaps. I was closing them one form at a time today. The next disbursement was scheduled for Friday, according to Theodore's originals. Instead of waiting, we set a trap. Marlene contacted the prosecutor's intake unit and asked for an investigator to observe a controlled pickup if Keller tried to collect again. Lila coordinated with Bay State to mark the cashier's check request as fraudulent and route it to a branch manager trained in suspicious activity reports. My job was simple: do nothing emotional, only follow instructions. I took Friday off work, told my boss it was legal, and sat by my phone like it was a fire alarm outside. Friday at 1012 a.m. Lila texted, "He's here." Keller had walked into Bay State's Cambridge branch in a navy suit requesting the scheduled cashier's check per guardianship instruction. The branch manager, following the script, asked for identification and the court authority. Keller produced copies and a confident smile. Then the manager said, "One moment," and stepped into the back office where an investigator and a bank security officer were waiting. Keller's smile tightened. He tried to leave, but the investigator introduced himself and asked him to sit. In a lobby full of strangers, Keller finally looked human, annoyed, and cornered today. Within an hour, Patricia called me from an unknown number, voice shaking with fury. "What did you do to Harold?" she demanded. I didn't argue. "Patricia, you are under a no-contact order," I said, and I recorded the call. She snapped, "You're ruining the family." I answered, "You used my identity to fund your life." Silence. Then she tried the old line, "I was helping you." I breathed once and said, "Help doesn't require forgery." She hung up. I forwarded the recording to Marlene, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for saying no anymore. Monday's status conference came early. The judge reviewed Marlene's motion, the bank logs, and the investigator's statement about Keller's attempted pickup. He ordered Keller to produce his client file and placed a temporary freeze on any guardianship-linked disbursement until a full accounting could be completed. The prosecutor's office opened a case for identity theft, mail fraud, and attempted financial exploitation. Lila promised Bay State would cooperate. I sat in the hallway afterward, staring at my calendar alert for nephew pickup, and realized justice isn't cinematic. It's administrative. It's forms, signatures, and deadlines. But it felt like breath returning to my chest. That night, my father came alone with a grocery bag, eyes swollen. He didn't step closer until I nodded. "I signed forms," he admitted. Patricia said it was for college and taxes. He looked at my kitchen table covered in folders and whispered I should have read them. I asked one question, "Did you ever see a statement?" He shook his head. She kept everything. I exhaled tired. If you want a relationship, I said, you stop being her shield. I handed him a boundary list, no secrets, no intermediaries, no signatures without Marlene. He read it twice and said, okay. By Wednesday, Patricia's world started shrinking. Her charity board chair called to take a pause, and Jenna's friends stopped returning messages. Keller was served with a subpoena, and his office sent an email demanding communication go through counsel. Marlene replied with the judge's order attached, one sentence long. I changed my locks, updated passwords, and set a credit check reminder instead of hourly panic. The noise in my head quieted. I didn't feel victorious. I felt awake. Now I could imagine a future without Patricia's moods running it. The money mattered, but the bigger win was this. I believed myself finally. That evening, Theodore called with one last detail, a handwritten note clipped to the 2008 modification signed by Patricia. It read, if Myra asks, say the account was empty. Theodore's voice went quiet. She planned your doubt, he said. I hung up and stared at my nephew's lunchbox on the counter. I wasn't fighting for a number anymore. I was fighting for the right to trust my own memory. My phone buzzed with an unknown message, a photo of my lobby taken from inside. The caption said, you can't lock out paperwork. I checked the feed and saw Keller again. I didn't open the door. I called security, asked them to escort him out, and saved the footage beside the forged release. Keller glanced up at the camera and lifted a second envelope like a warning. When security approached, he left without speaking. Marlene texted, he's pushing because the audit will expose more. I sat at my table and listened to my nephew breathe in the next room. My anger cooled into focus. Patricia could chase paper. I could build a life. Tomorrow we would file for restitution and a permanent protective order. After I would decide healing on my terms. The audit order changed the air in my apartment. For weeks I'd lived with my laptop bag by the door, ready to prove I existed. Now the judge's freeze and the subpoena meant the story would move without my constant panic. I still checked my camera feed, but I stopped circling my own thoughts. Marlene told me to keep doing normal things, groceries, meetings, sleep. Normal felt strange, like wearing new shoes. Yet every time my phone stayed quiet for an hour, I felt my shoulders drop. I wasn't healed, but I finally had space to choose what healing meant. The prosecutor assigned an investigator named Campos, and he didn't care about Patricia's charm. He cared about timestamps, routing numbers, and who signed what. Lila sent him the branch footage of Keller trying to pick up the cashier's check, and Marlene handed over the forged medical release and the rushed deed packet. Campos interviewed me in a plain room and asked one question that mattered. What do you want? I said. Restitution and distance. He nodded, then said, distance is easier when the paper agrees. That became our plan. By Tuesday, subpoenas went out and names stopped being a toy. My father asked for a chance to help, but I didn't hand him forgiveness like a coupon. I gave him tasks. He closed the old P.O. box in person, signed an affidavit that he never authorized the trust, and emailed me every document Patricia had ever stored for safekeeping. It was a stack of tax folders and sealed envelopes that smelled like dust and control. We opened them with Marlene on video. Each page confirmed the same pattern. Patricia didn't raise me. She managed risk. Dad cried once. I didn't comfort him. I simply said, keep showing up, no excuses. Jenna surprised me in small ways, which is the only kind I trust. She deleted her edited clip and gave Campos the raw file plus a shared calendar export showing Keller meetings labeled cleanup. She also admitted she'd helped scan my signature years ago for forms, thinking it was normal. Hearing that hurt more than Patricia's insults because it proved how early the grooming started. Jenna asked if I hated her. I told her the truth. I don't hate you. I don't trust you yet. She nodded, and for once she didn't try to perform remorse for an audience either. The restitution hearing wasn't dramatic. It was fluorescent lights, numbered exhibits, and the slow grind of consequences. The judge ordered a full accounting of every guardianship disbursement, including the 2008 modification Keller drafted. He also signed a warrant for Keller's client file after Keller failed to comply with the subpoena deadline. When Keller's lawyer tried to argue privilege, the judge asked privilege for fraud, and the room went silent. Patricia didn't show. Her attorney sent a letter claiming illness. Campos said convenient and kept flipping pages. I watched my own life become legible in court ink. For the first time. 2 weeks later, Bay State confirmed the next cashier's check had been stopped and reversed into a court-controlled escrow. It wasn't all the money, but it was proof the pipeline could be cut. Theodore called to say the court appointed an independent fiduciary to replace Patricia retroactively for the final accounting. Hearing that made my throat burn. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my childhood back, and I knew that wasn't possible. but I could reclaim the part of my childhood that had been turned into a ledger. That night, I took my nephew for ice cream and laughed in public. When the adrenaline faded, I noticed the quiet spaces Patricia used to occupy. My phone stopped buzzing, but my brain still expected it. So I built something to fill the space with purpose. I partnered with a local nonprofit that teaches young adults how to protect credit, spot mail, scams, and read form before signing. On the first Saturday workshop, a 17-year-old asked, "How do you know you're not overreacting?" I said, "Overreacting is panic. Preparing is evidence." I showed them my checklist, freeze, credit, save screenshots, tell one trusted person. Watching them take notes felt like reclaiming my story. My father and I rebuilt in inches. We met for coffee once a week, no Patricia updates unless Marlene approved. He started therapy, which I didn't applaud. I simply watched for consistency. Some weeks he showed up and talked. Some weeks he just sat and listened. That was still progress. Jenna stayed at arm's length, sending brief updates about her counseling and never posting my name online. I kept the protective order active, not as punishment but as structure. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're self-preservation. The day my father returned my birth mother's photo, I cried, not from loss, from release, finally. People keep asking if I feel guilty. I don't, not anymore. Guilt was Patricia's favorite currency, and I spent it to buy scraps of peace. Now I pay in clarity. If someone calls you unstable for asking questions, write the questions down anyway. If someone hides your mail to help assume they're hiding more than paper. And if you're tempted to stay quiet because it's family, remember this family isn't a legal strategy. Your voice matters. Your name matters. Protecting yourself is not betrayal, it's adulthood. I learned that the hard way under chandeliers and court seals. I survived anyway. A year from now, the accounting may still be winding through court, but my life is already different. My home is quiet, my mail comes to me, and my bank calls me before believing anyone else. I keep my evidence folder archived, not because I live in fear, but because I respect what I endured. On my fridge, a sticky note reads, "Facts first, breathe second, then speak." If this story hit you, tell me in the comments what boundary you're afraid to set. And if you're still here, subscribe because we're building a place where receipts beat rumors every time. I didn't get a perfect ending, and I don't chase one anymore. Patricia will face whatever the evidence earns her, and that's between her and the system. My job is simpler, protect my peace, and invest in people who don't require me to shrink. Sometimes healing looks like a courthouse order. Sometimes it looks like cooking dinner while a kid does homework at your table. I'm learning both. I used to think belonging was a door someone else unlocked. Now I know it's a room I build, brick by brick with truth. Your voice matters. Say it until you believe.